But that was North
the story.
Korea, so it's different.
Yeah, but like you could say the same thing. That's a plausible unification of Asia. Is like, of course, not North Korea, but say China did the exact same thing. Unified Korea, got Southeast Asia, invaded Japan. You have this Asian super state on your hands
Mm-hmm.
that
And
no
it
one would
could
be able to
very
deal
easily
with.
happen to us, and I don't want it to happen to us. That's why I'm encouraging us to expand our influence, to keep up our influence elsewhere. That's why I don't agree with Donald Trump when he says, like, oh, we shouldn't be the world's
Yeah,
police force.
I
Like, we
mean,
need to be the world's
whenever
police
he
force.
says that though, he's also isolating our allies. Like, I don't think we should be policing the world, but at the end of the day, like, I still think we should be defending our allies around the
Yes,
world.
and I agree with something he says. Like, he says, like, we shouldn't be policing the world, but we should be investing, like, a lot of its money into our own infrastructure. And obviously, like, our own infrastructure, like our highways, our airports, and everything else, that's
Yeah,
all
these things were
crumbling,
built.
right?
Yeah, that was
We need to
built in like the
pump a lot.
'50s.
Yeah, we need to pump a lot of money into this, but we need to find some way to sustain it. And I think the only way you can sustain it, you look at our non-discretionary spending, 2/3 of that is going into Medicare and Social Security. I feel like we should dial that back. We should not have as big a
You
welfare
guys
state
both
as we
make
have.
great points. At the end of the
I
day,
just I
this country is
I
fucked
feel
up.
like I feel like
that
if
makes
we
some
weren't
good points
policing
too,
the
Rico.
world,
Yeah, you guys.
and
That's why I
another
said you
thing,
guys.
I feel like we could police the world the same amount that we are now, but with a much smaller military budget.
I don't know because
I feel like it would be possible because there's so much money that just goes into the military, and it's just
I'm-
like, what exactly is most of this going towards?
I'm never going
Nah,
to-
I don't.
I'm
I don't
never gonna
agree
say-
with you, Damon.
Yeah,
We need to
There's-
spend
I'm
as
always
much money
going
as
to
we
argue
can on the
against you just
military,
because-
bro.
But like, you
because I
gotta
get a lot of
think,
money from there.
yeah,
I mean, it's like 50-50 because we really don't need to spend so much on the military. 'Cause
You're
we
fucking
got,
dumb, bro.
bro. We have
What?
replay. We have the most nukes in
What?
the fucking world, bro.
Nigga,
Okay,
We
nukes are not.
don't.
Nukes
Russia
are
has
never
more
a
nukes
good
than us.
answer.
But-
Yeah, Russia has more anyways.
But think about this, Jalil. Think about how many people the military employs. The
We
military
have shit. We
collectively-
have shit. We have shit we didn't even use yet.
Yeah, obviously, but the
Come
military
on, bro.
employs like
Stop
the
it.
military, not just like the military, not like the
We
actual
got the
military
hydrogen bomb.
reserve,
We didn't.
but, like, all the-
when
Jalil,
have
I
we
don't
ever used
care.
hydrogen bomb?
Jalil, I don't care what you're talking about. That is a deterrent to war, like world wars.
Again, Jalil, the moment one person uses nukes, everyone's dead.
Yes,
Literally,
that's-
everyone is dead.
That is why
the-
nukes
the-
are a good thing because they prevent us
Yo,
from declaring
Russell
war on one
Westbrook is
another.
fucking nice, Jalil.
But like,
Yeah.
now
We're not
I'm
gonna
not saying
go
I'm
war
not saying
because
drastic cuts. I'm saying like even just 10% of that. That's a good
know.
chunk of money to do something with.
I know, but think about how many people the military employs. Like not just like soldiers, but like people that work for the military-industrial complex. That's like 6 million people, and you're putting their jobs on the line. Like this is an important form of employment.
But you could
for
you
so
could say
large-
take that money, boost it back in the economy. Who's to say that wouldn't create other jobs?
27
I'm not-
points.
I'm not saying again. I'm not saying a massive amount. They could take 10, hell, even 5% of it and just put it towards something else. And like,
I can hear you. I'll be right back though.
yeah, like take 5% of it and put it towards education, infrastructure, literally updating the U.S.'s, internet infrastructure. That's another problem is all these companies that get paid to update it and they never do. They constantly say we're gonna build. They get all these grants to build, all these
Yo,
fiber
that's
optics
actually a
around
really
the
bad
country.
fucking thing that's happening right now. It pisses
Yeah,
me off.
they get billions of dollars to build these fiber optics around the country, and they don't do anything with it. Like we need the government to have its own money to build these things rather than these companies, because we're reaching a point where it's like all of the government's money is going towards military, social security, these things, and then it's up to these country or these corporations and stuff to do everything at home.
These corporations
think about
are ass.
yeah, they're not going to actually do it. They're just going to say they're going to do it and take the money. And then at the end of the day, the person who gets screwed is us at the bottom.
Yep.
That's why I feel like we could literally 5% take 5% of how much was it? 680 billion you said? Is Al even here?
Bull lag.
Hey Siri, what's 5% of 680 billion?
Yeah, I'm back. It's the U.S. budget for the military is like around 600 billion, but
Yeah,
my thing
just
is, my
5%
thing
of that is,
I disagree with you because private enterprise has proved time and time again that it can do the same functions as government, just better. And
It
that's why I
can.
believe in corporations. I don't.
It can, but at the same time, our government is not enforcing the very laws it passed to make it work.
And they should enforce them.
No, fuck.
And they should let
Exactly.
private enterprise do what it does.
But that's the thing. They're not enforcing them. So we've reached a problem where everyone's like, but private enterprise, it works
So
best.
Yeah, I know, but instead of dialing back the money we spend on the military, why don't we just enforce these laws that we already have? That seems
But
like a
that's
much
the
more
thing.
easier
We spend 600 billion on it. Literally, even 10% of that. 10%.
You can say that,
5%.
but 600 billion is not that much when you think about how much we have to spend in regardless. We have trillions and trillions of dollars to spend every year.
That
We
is
spend
true.
a small fraction of it on the military.
But a fraction of it is on military. But at the end of the day, I swear, some of you got to talk about our allies. Their countries need to start pitching in more. If we're a global police force, I mean, why are these countries not pitching in?
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think every NATO country,
If-
every country you have like a mutual defense pact with should be
Oh
contributing
my
at least.
goodness.
Whenever Europe is always having these talks of having their own standing European Union army, that's great because we can use some of that money here. Literally,
Well, as far
just
as the European
5
Union goes, I don't want to be locked out of like the European.
Again, not like locked out, but like if they had their own unified army on top of ours, that would go
it's
a
a
long
big
way
advantage.
in helping us. Yeah,
But the problem is, Damon, you're not thinking about this. What if this European army, this collective European army, decides one day like, oh, we don't need the U.S. as an ally anymore. We'll like work against their interests and we'll
Oh my
work
goodness.
against
I
the
keep
Russians as well, which is what
I
our
mean,
own interests.
they are a sovereign country. If they make that
I know.
choice, they make that choice.
I know, and that's the thing. We don't want them to make that choice. We want them to be in a position that's favorable to us. We always want to be in the most favorable position to
Yeah,
America.
but like
because we're America.
that's the thing. The U.S. is trying to keep the world in this perpetual state of subordination, and
Yeah, the status quo.
eventually the world the world already doesn't, for the most part, like it. Most people don't like Americans.
Most people, I mean, you can
Most
say
people don't like America because
it.
they're fucking jealous of us.
Yeah, most people don't like it, but we need to keep it going as long as we can. Obviously, most people didn't like the British when they were in charge of the world. People were trying to revolt against that all the time. But
Again,
like,
this
we need
whole
to keep it going as
idea
long
that
as
we
can.
have to keep it going, like, why not just focus on us and our allies and we do our thing?
Because if we don't keep it going, someone else will come in and they'll try to get it going for us.
You guys
And
both
that- in
make
this case,
excellent
it's China.
points, man.
Like, at the end of the day, we can't police the world. We're trying, but it's showing that in the long run it ain't gonna
No.
last.
We have done a good job of policing the world for 75 years, and in historical context, that is like.
I mean,
pretty good.
but you got to think the first half of it. The only reason we did a good job of it is because the rest of the world was essentially rebuilding from half a
Yeah,
century
but-
of war.
No.
Wars.
Think about the Napoleonic wars. Wars. They devastated Europe, right? Europe was in horrible shape, and Britain
Yeah.
arose as like the only country that wasn't devastated by war.
That,
so
that
they took over
and
the rest of the world.
again, one of the big reasons why Britain was even in the position to rise up was because, again, destroyed the Spanish Armada. Everyone else doesn't have a navy, and so everyone that's trying to build a navy, they're constantly trying to catch up. So of course,
Well-
if you look at it in a numbers way, we're
You're
ahead.
You're thinking about 300 years too soon because the Dutch and the
but again-
Portuguese had pretty formidable navies.
They had pretty formidable
And the
navies,
English
but
Armada was complete failure
you just
next to
named
that.
the Dutch and the Portuguese were the English allies. So again, you got to think
The Portuguese were
terms
the
of-
Dutch. The Dutch were not necessarily English.
they weren't our
allies.
allies, but at the end of the day, they weren't necessarily their enemy. Was the issue, and what ends up happening in that situation, like with the U.S. Yeah, like we were on top, and so was NATO, but that was mostly because the rest of the world was just rebuilding or trying to catch up. Like we don't, and again, we're ahead today because of
And
that.
the
Like the
thing
world
is-
rebuilt, but they didn't.
But we funded that rebuilding, right? Like, you know about
Yeah.
the Marshall Plan. We pumped
Yeah,
$12 billion into Western Europe to build them back up to be our allies. So we can compete
yeah,
against them.
that makes sense. They are our allies. They should stay our allies. But the rest of the world, we don't necessarily
What the
need to keep them
fuck, man?
subordinate at all times. Like,
I
if the
disagree.
rest of the
'Cause
world decides, if they decide they want to, I don't know, break away, form their own little union in their region. Who's to say that's not their own interest? They're just looking out for themselves.
I disagree because, you know, the Soviet Union, they expanded their influence over half the world. We expanded our influence over half the world.
And
it's
again,
important that
it
we
was
keep that.
whenever the Soviet Union was expanding their influence, the U.S. countered it. Which again,
Yeah, and that's important to do.
that makes sense. But now we're at a
We're
point
competing
where
against China now for that.
but China
geopolitical
isn't doing.
interest.
They're in what, Africa? Like, they're not
Yeah,
really.
no. China is starting to do this by pumping billions of dollars, not into Africa, but they're pumping it into Serbia, they're pumping it into the rest of Europe, they're pumping it into Latin America, into the Bahamas now. Maybe at some point they'll have military bases
But
in the Bahamas.
all
which
these
they'll
people
right up
in
the
these
coast of Florida.
countries, all these people in these countries aren't going to say that's a bad thing. Or if you tell them stop taking money for China, are we going to give them the money?
Yeah, they're not gonna say it's a bad thing, but
Yeah,
it's not gonna be in our interest.
You got to say
right?
that, like.
I don't. Damon, the thing you're not understanding, I don't care about these other countries, what they think is in their best interest. I care about what's important to America, like what matters
But that's
to
the
us.
thing.
What we
Like, at
think
the
is
end of the day, that doesn't work.
it works for us, and we are the only people I truly care about.
That,
don't care
that
about
doesn't work. That doesn't work in this era of globalism and everything. You can't just
Yeah,
only care about your country. That's
we should
already
only
why
care about
people. That's already why people hate Americans as it is, because they feel like Americans do not care about anything but themselves.
But
I
that's
mean, we should care about our
why
allies,
should we
but
care
first and
about the
foremost,
others?
We should care about ourselves.
But that's the thing. You don't necessarily have to care about them. But at the same time, like, you can't get mad when someone else does. You can't have it both ways.
We should be willing to defend them, but we shouldn't prioritize them over our own well-being, right? Like, we don't want Chinese military bases 90 miles off the coast of Florida.
I mean, yeah,
Like, this is the
obviously.
Cuban Missile Crisis all over again.
But, like, in Africa, like, no one, you can't tell them don't take Chinese money and then be like, well, are you gonna give us the money? Because once you say no, they're gonna look at you like you're speaking fucking Spanish or
Well, the
something.
thing is, we do provide Africans a service. We
Yeah,
have all these military
they
facilities.
definitely get
We
plenty
pay
of
our
aid
guys-
from U.S.
Yeah.
But if they want the kind of aid that, if China's willing to give them the aid, they're not gonna say
China's-
no just to say
But
no.
China's giving them the aid, but they're giving them aid that they can't pay back.
But that's
It's
the thing;
aid that
they
they're
don't
going to
care.
eventually-
If someone's giving them aid, you know they're gonna take it because they're third world countries.
It's just like,
So, like,
you're
if
never
the U.S.
going.
if the U.S. wants to keep their interest, they gotta do something in the region. They
you're
gotta
saying
do what
the US
China's
has to
doing.
U.S. has to be evil like China's being, is what you're saying.
If you want the influence, you either gotta
That's what you're saying. So what you're
invest
saying-
or
But,
yeah,
but the
you
argument,
either
the
gotta
argument that makes
participate.
this here is the U.S. needs to be just as racist and bigoted and unequal as China's being with the rest
But
of them.
I'm saying that if the U.S. doesn't want them taking Chinese money, they need to offer something that they'll take instead. Because no country in their right mind is just going to say no.
Well, the U.S. is
because
offering things that
But that's the
Africans
thing.
and big that Chinese can't
they're
offer.
exactly they're getting U.S. aid on top of Chinese aid.
Stop! Let me
So
look
they're
at the
getting
stats.
USA, they're getting U.S. military support, like against insurrections in their own country.
Oh my
Yes,
god!
but they're getting on top of that
34
Chinese
points,
aid.
Jalil.
So who in their right mind would say no to getting both types of aid? Like, why would they just say
Damn,
no to
he has
China
more
just so they
points
can
than your
only
whole
get one
team.
type?
Because the aid they're getting from China is not like true aid. It's like aid that's going to keep them from developing. Like, yeah, we'll build all this infrastructure in the country, but you're going to have to pay us back all this money that you're never going to be able to afford. So you're going to have to default on your debts. We're going to be able to come in and take all this land from you.
That's a
build
good
all these
point,
military
but
installations, and take over
You
all
know
this
these countries
territory.
don't care is the thing. They
don't
see
care
money.
because their leaders
They
are
see
idiots.
money they see money and they're gonna take it. So at the end of the day, the U.S. has to make a choice: either, pump some money into these countries so they don't take Chinese money, or at this point, leave it.
I don't know. We're just saying the same thing.
Oh, hold up.